Live. Welcome to Karriem and Company for episode number 11.
Number 11, and we got a special treat today. We got our brother.
That's right, State Representative, District 41 here in the state of Mississippi, the Honorable Kabir Karriem.
You all calling me the Honorable?
The Honorable.
Yeah.
The Honorable Kabir Karriem.
I heard that.
So welcome to this edition, number 11. Just a few housekeeping rules. Go to YouTube, subscribe to Karriem and Company. Hey, on Facebook, like us as well, and press the like button. And right now, tell someone that we're on.
Karriem and Company's on the air. Khadijah out of Houston, how you do?
All right.
How you doing? All right. And we're just so glad and happy that everyone is tuning in to us, back with us. And if you miss any of the episodes, as my brother said, this is episode 11, you can hit us up on YouTube.
That's right. And we're going to jump in with both feet.
Go ahead.
Once again, I can't thank you enough. I know you've been on the road. A lot of things has transpired within the last 24 hours. And we just want to thank you.
And just thank you for the job that you do, because when we participate in social justice issues, get out there on the front lines, sometimes it's a thankless job. And so just thank you so much for just doing what you do.
Well, we've always taught from the cradle that our purpose in life is to serve. And, that's what we try to do. And whatever position or seat that we hold, we try to make it a little bit better than how we found it.
That's right.
And I'm glad to be here and share with you all what has been taking place over these last few weeks since we've been experiencing this Corona-19 pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How is that overall? How was the impact? And give us a little backdrop in terms of how it relates to the African American community, Kabir. I know that's been a lot of unknowns, but kind of update us on what is actually going on.
It's affecting our community disproportionately. As of yesterday, and hopefully before we end this telecast today, that I'll give you some current numbers. But as of yesterday, it was we had over 7,200 cases here in the state of Mississippi, with over 250 deaths. And the majority of those deaths and cases are African Americans. And we have to take this pandemic in our community more serious than what we're taking it. We're filming this inclusiveness in our place of business. But when we're in public, we have to wear our masks, gloves, practice social distancing, and particularly look out for our children and the elderly in the community. And we have to take every precaution. Particularly now, I was just seeing a piece where the governor, Tate Reeves, had previously said he was going to open up the state. Mm-hmm. Well, yesterday we had the largest increase in cases, which was, I think, almost 400 cases.
In one day?
In one day.
Yeah.
And now he's revisiting that, reopening the state. So that's the long and short of where we are right now. Mm-hmm. But we have to take all the precautions and measures that we possibly can, because it's affecting our community more.
And if I can just jump in talking about Governor Tate Reeves, and where we are in terms of social distancing, how it disproportionately affects us being African Americans, and how many of us are not taking it seriously. One of the interesting things, and I hope I'm not ahead of you, Ahmed, is what $1.2 billion to
$1.25 billion that was given from the federal government.
And so in terms of what we get, what Black people get, or how we benefit from it, how do you think that's going to roll?
You know, it's interesting that you brought that up. And folks, we don't have a script. I mean, we're shooting off
No,
the
this
cuff.
is live.
No, we're live.
We're live.
Interactive radio.
Well,
Telecast.
And Jamal Karriem, thank you for tuning in. He's one of them faithful.
Yes.
there has been no discussion. Look, everybody's seeing the rift that has taken place between the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the speaker of the House about who controls this $1.25 billion that has been given from the federal government. And I heard an African proverb that said, when two elephants fight, the grass is the one that suffers.
Mm.
And I use that African proverb because African Americans are the ones who suffer.
Mm-hmm. All right.
You know, who is speaking about those essential workers and the disparities that affect our community the most here in this country, particularly here in Mississippi? When you start talking about poverty, the income gap, what blacks make compared to whites make. I mean, the pandemic has pulled the covers off of disparities in this state. And I was at a press conference and I heard the lieutenant governor and the governor speak. And they made their case about who should control the money. But the most important press conference that I attended and was part of was the one from the Black Caucus. And I thought our chairwoman, Senator Angela Turner Ford, did a marvelous job on laying out not only the work of the Black Caucus, but who this pandemic is affecting the most.
Yes, she did.
And she laid out the positions that the caucus has been taking and our ask to the governor in executive orders that we recommend that he should make.
Yeah.
Right.
And that we can get help to those who need the help the most. You know, folks are trying to get their unemployment. I mean, people
And that's backlogged.
It's backlogged. They haven't been able to, and these are how folks are eating that are not working. We got our folks, the so-called essential workers on the front line, taking jobs that were deemed inessential. Now they're essential. People of color are on the front lines with these jobs, which they are coming in contact with this pandemic first. And we're advocating them some hazard pay. You know, they need hazard pay
Right.
on top of what they're getting paid.
I agree.
And so those are just a few of things that we've been advocating, being a member of the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus. You know, who should control the money? You know, constitutionally they say the legislature's supposed to control it, but is the glass half full or the glass half empty? Because if there's any evidence of how we have been treated since I've been in the legislature, it hadn't been good on either part. So,
and on that vein, in our conversations, there's a couple of things that pertain to the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, that has affected us directly here in Mississippi. Number one, your small business owners that don't have relationships with banks and the money running out on them, as there have been hundreds of thousands of applications being processed for the stimulus money. But the big corporations, educational institutions that have millions of dollars but are still being granted, airlines and all kind of corporate conglomerates are sucking up this money. And now we're approaching about the second time that now all the money is dried up again. And then on a local scale with our school districts and little Johnny Be Good, who lives in a rural district or lives in a rural area, don't have access to the viral education that's going on social media because of lack of broadband access. And so, all of these things, that you have concerns about, and I'm pretty sure the Black Caucus and members of the legislature have concern about, because in actuality, if you're at home and taking homeschooling on a computer and you don't have a computer or don't have broadband access, you're failing in your grade.
you know, we have been in close conversations with educational experts. One being Dr. Earl Watkins out of Hinds County, who has been helping putting these educational digital dialogues for the caucus together, putting the panelists together. And one of the things that he explained to us in a sidebar, that there's always been a summer slide. You know, kids get out of school, you know, they're out for a few months, getting them back in grade, acclimated back into the school system from being out from summer. Well, now you have the pandemic slide.
Right.
These kids hadn't been in school since March.
Right.
And we don't know when they're going back, but whenever they do go back, there has to be an adjustment.
And it has to be addressed.
And it has to be addressed.
Yes.
And I am kind of concerned that I don't want the naysayers to public education to use this as a way to dismantle public education.
Because it easily could be.
It easily could, because you're hearing talk now, they're talking more about broadband and the internet in rural areas, but they're also talking about distant learning.
Right.
But to what extent?
Right, because it could be on a permanent basis.
Could be. You just never know, because we're going in uncharted waters now.
Right.
And whatever plan that is going to transpire in education needs to be talked about and planned now.
Right.
These superintendents need direction now. These teachers need direction now.
That's
right.
What's
going to happen? Because these superintendents have to they already have emergency plans in most districts, but now they have to put a pandemic plan. How are we going to keep the kids safe? How are we going to practice social distancing inside the school system? How are we going to have, how they're going to be able to wash their hands constantly? These things have to be discussed, and it's nothing that can happen overnight. It's going to take some strategic planning.
The chairperson, Angela Turner Ford, made some good points addressing those very same issues, and also talking about the frontline people being of African American descent, being the majority of the people that are hospitalized for COVID-19. Is there any talk or discussion in terms of some sort of funding for those people who don't have access to health care, who would otherwise in other states benefit from Obamacare?
Well, one of the caucus's position is a lot of testing.
Mm-hmm.
We got to have testing. And I shouldn't have to have symptoms to be tested, because a lot of people walking around sick
And don't know.
That's
right.
It was funny yesterday, which wasn't funny, because when we went to the Capitol yesterday, it was a scary situation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we walked through the door, the first thing they did was take our temperature. Then a nurse came over and asked us questions about certain symptoms of COVID-19. Have we experienced any of that? And based on our response, whether we entered the Capitol or not. And then we were presented with options of gloves and masks to do the people's work for that day, which I came in gloved up, armed up,
Masked
up, and everything. So it was just an interesting day. And then, and this is Kabir talking.
How far did y'all have to sit apart?
We were separated yesterday in 4 different areas of the Capitol. We had a group that was separated in one room, and in 113, and on the I was on the first floor. Members were on the second floor, the third. All throughout the Capitol on the House side, we were separated, and we listened to the speaker. We listened to House Speaker Philip Gunn through a speaker.
So does that change the face of politics in terms of getting deals done to some aspect?
If things stay the way they were yesterday, a lot is going to be changed. Politics as we know it in the state will be changed. But what I hope is changed is who we affect our policies on. I mean, we need to affect change on the folks who have been affected by this pandemic the most. And I didn't hear that in the conversation when I heard the speaker and the lieutenant governor talk about the reasonings of why they needed that $1.25 billion. Now, there's been some assurances that people at the Capitol that have been left out of the conversation will have a seat at the table, and that's good. But me speaking for my folks in House District 41, I think we needed some overtures, goodwill overtures, or goodwill efforts put in place before we believe anything that has been told to us.
Before we leave the COVID-19 subject, one more thing that I'm noticing in public opinion and in news media and scientific quarters, the drug remdesivir, as a cure is developing, you sit on the public health committee for the state, but as a drug is developed for a cure, or even as a cure comes about, what kind of checks and balances is going to be put in place that the drug won't go to the rich and the poor still suffer, or it won't be based on those who are have insurance, economically eligible? Because right now we're still having a problem with everyone just getting tested for COVID-19.
Well, to your question, as you just laid out, I don't know. But one thing I can promise you is that I will be in the trenches fighting for what is right and getting those treatments to the community and to the people that are affected the most.
Right.
And we got to do the right thing too.
Right.
You know, we as a community have to take heed and take this pandemic serious. Just because it's beautiful outside,
Right.
and the temptation is for us to gather and socialize and barbecue and do those things.
250 at a house party.
Look, we have to be more mindful of this pandemic and do what we can to protect our children and elderly, and because it has no address, no gender,
That's right.
no age.
It makes your job, our job, much harder if we get out here and act a fool. Get out here and go against social distancing, go against the rules, and then you're trying to fight for the economically disadvantaged, those who are socially disadvantaged. You're trying to get monies and trying to make sure that people have the proper access to education, healthcare, so on and so forth. But then they can say, well, what about these over here? They look like they don't want nothing, or they don't want to do anything. And I'm speaking about these house parties. If y'all watch the CBS Evening News, I think it was 250 at that one. Dak Prescott and company, they had a house party. I think it was over 40 at that one. So if we don't do the things that we need to do to help ourselves, we're going to continue to be in the shape that we're in.
And before if I may, I don't know who's going to end up with control as of right now. We did pass a bill yesterday that did take control over the $1.25 billion that came through from the federal government, but the governor can veto it. And then there will be an action to either override the veto, or the governor will be put in play to sustain his veto. So what I'm asking folks who are listening to us today, call your representative and share with him or her your position on that money, but make sure that you ask them to let that money be distributed equally and equitably to the people that have been affected so disproportionately during this pandemic, particularly in those states, and remedy some of the disparities that we already know we have even before the pandemic.
Absolutely. Just want to take time to give a lot of love to the Congressional Black Caucus there in the state of Jackson. Had a question that I'd like for you to answer regarding the purpose and what it means, what it represents. I want to take time to shout out to Antoine Perry, Clarissa Hodo, Corey Clark. Thank you for checking in with us
you
today.
so very much. Yes.
Lots of love to you.
Oh yeah.
Back to the representative. For those who question the purpose and what's it all about, I feel that you all represent the consciousness and the voice for those that are voiceless. And you'd like to, whatever, share with us the reason.
But you said congressional, and
I'm sorry.
No, but they do deserve a special shout out, because without them,
Right.
we would not have gotten the influx of cash and money that we so desperately need to fight the pandemic. So shout out to Congressman Benny Thompson and the congressional delegation who made that possible, who is the chairman of Homeland Security.
Mm-hmm.
But as it relates to the Black Caucus, a lot of folks don't know that the Black Caucus is a 44-year institution in the state of Mississippi,
Wow.
with the first member coming in 1968, which was Robert Clark. He was a caucus of one. And now we have 53 members in the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus.
Is that the one they used to break his chair to keep him from
No, they
sitting?
didn't just break his chair. They sawed his desk in half so he wouldn't sit with the rest of the members, and he had to sit by himself
In the Mississippi legislature.
in the Mississippi legislature. And that desk still exists today.
There's a Black History fact for you.
Um,
Check it out.
But you have 53 members, and I feel that we are the conscience of the legislature, because we represent at the Capitol 1.2 million African Americans in the state of Mississippi. We are their voice. And that's why it's important for you, number one, to know who your representative is, who he or she is. And number two, be in contact with them, but know the issues. I mean, know what you need, what they can do, what their job is. Now, a legislator, which they probably will, I know I will if I could get a cat out the tree for you, but our job is to legislate and write laws and put laws in place that will better serve you, from corrections to healthcare, to disabilities, to unemployment, to education, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. Everything that affects you on the daily comes from the Mississippi legislature. So it's important to know your legislator and know where they stand on certain issues.
All right.
Well, that's all right. I really appreciate that. With the time we have remaining,
Did that take up too much time?
No.
Okay.
No, we could go another
There's no
hour.
such thing. We're unscripted. I mean,
this is
everything is relevant, But we've been doing this for so long, radio and with the exposure to TV and everything, that we can roll like this unscripted. So everything's of relevance.
And once again, I really appreciate you joining us. I mean, we can't thank you enough.
Man, anytime I have an opportunity to be with my brothers, it's always good.
Well, you're part of Karriem and Company,
always
period,
good.
with a big period behind it. So, I mean,
With
thank you.
the time we have remaining, there was a documentary that you suggested a few weeks ago, The Innocent Files. For those that are listening, joining with us, that's a series on Netflix. It's worth taking the time to watch with your children, have discussion, open discussion, and learn a lot, and be open to learn, because that impacts all of us directly as well as indirectly. And Kamal, you've had the fortunate opportunity to work some of those cases.
Yes. Curtis Austin, the late Curtis Austin, who was a city councilman here and also a judge here in the city of Columbus, he was one of the attorneys of record for Levon Brooks. And so, as an investigator with Herb Chandler, who was an investigator with that office, familiar with the bite marks, familiar with the tragedy of that case, the viciousness of then District Attorney Forrest Allgood, and just a miscarriage of justice that is so prevalent all the way around in Mississippi. The gravity of that, I think that, and my brother is well aware, the representative, that some things that, steps that need to be taken to redress those cases and other cases that have not been stated as of yet, you know. But I'm happy that the Innocence files through the Innocence Project had enough willfulness and mindfulness to come down to Oxford County, Mississippi, bring this to the light of the forefront, something that happened in the early 90s, and bring it to fruition and to tell the plights of both LaVon Brooks and Kenny Brewer, which Kenny Brewer, he's still with us, he's still alive. And so you know, we thank God that they've been released, but we need to be a more aware and caring community in terms of the plight of these individuals and even what's going on with them now.
Brother Kabir, earlier this year, you had a visit to Parchman Penitentiary here in the state of Mississippi. What was that like?
It was a real life-changing experience. Before I get off into the Parchman visit, I want to say that I've been in conversation with District Attorney Scott Karriem and Senator Angela Turner Ford, who represents, that's in her senatorial district, and hopefully that we'll be able to come back and give you an update on some things as it relates to LaVon Brooks and Kenny Brewer, because the state has never apologized to those families or those individuals.
Really?
And, you know, one I was told was done in private, but publicly they have never been apologized
And on
to.
record.
And on record.
On historic record.
So without, you know, giving any details about some plans, but I just leave it like that. But to your question about Parchman, we've got some real problems in our correction system here in the state of Mississippi. There is no doubt about it. I went down with a delegation of caucus members, Black caucus members, to view the facility. And, you know, it took me a few weeks to get myself back together after that visit to experience how inmates, particularly inmates of color, are being treated and how their conditions are inhumane. And then the pandemic broke. Now what we've been told that we've only had 4 cases inside of Parchman or our correction facilities. And that's all we can go by right now. There's only been 4 cases. But if the conditions that we bear witness to have not been rectified, not only would you have a pandemic of COVID-19, I'm sure that there would be some other situations medically that could go on down there as well. So I've been on the corrections forefront, even when I was a city council. You know, we were one of the first municipalities to hire felons here in the city of Columbus, in the whole state.
Ban the Box initiative?
It wasn't called so much ban the box, but people that have been formerly incarcerated have rights too.
Right.
And you just can't discriminate against them because they got a certain felons on them. So I was happy to be a part and lead that initiative. Right now, I'm still an advocate for criminal justice reform. I think that the state needs to take where they are seriously, and the state is in a vice right now. You've got Jay-Z and Rock Nation that are suing on one end, and then you got the Justice Department that are coming down on the state on the conditions of the federal prison. So the state is gonna have to make some remedies to these actions, these lawsuits, these court filings.
Right.
So it's gonna be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Right, and then you still got the people getting their rights back after they've served time and being able to be treated as a citizen, the right to vote and all that, and that's in the Federal Court of Appeals as well.
You're exactly right, and it's so convoluted how the Mississippi legislature makes it almost impossible for folks who have paid their debt to society to even get their voting rights back. And I think that is so unfair because the process is so cumbersome and so much red tape. Why should a person, and this is not because it's law, this is because whoever that correction chair of Judge D, a former chair, used to say, well, you still have to wait 5 years before we give you your voting rights back, and that's unconstitutional within itself.
And I'm so thankful and happy that in this particular suit that's before the Federal Court of Appeals, you have 17 states that do the same thing as Mississippi. They deny former inmates their right to vote. If this thing goes through for all those other states that have joined on the suit, that they will also be able to get their rights back as well.
If people have paid their debt to society, no matter what has happened, they should be given the right to vote. But not only that, they should be given back their full citizenship rights as well.
I want you to take us on out of here with closing remarks. But before we do that, I just want to give some thanks and love to our listeners and viewers. Once again, any episode up until 11, you can watch again on YouTube. Subscribe. Please hit that like button. Hey, as well as Facebook, please subscribe. Once again, like us on Facebook. Take us out of here, Kabir.
I get to take y'all out
Yeah, just come on, take us out.
And would you come back?
anytime.
Okay.
My final words would be, I appreciate you all giving me the opportunity and platform to speak about what's going on in the state. But I encourage, again, for individuals out there to support your legislature, those he or she that represents you, particularly the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus. You have to understand, we are all you have as it relates to state politics. You have no statewide or state holder. Your legislature are your highest ranking officials in the state as it relates to the African American community. So support them. Get involved with them. Be in contact with them. We need your help. We need your support. And remember, we're on the battle lines fighting for you.
What are those numbers, by the way, before we get out of here for today? I know we're up to 7,000, right?
Yeah, but they haven't posted it yet, but I'm sure we're at 7,200, but I'm sure it's higher than that today because it has been increasing steadily every day.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the deaths are over 300 now.
Yeah, I think I was just looking at yesterday's deaths were, just give me 1 minute. Here we go. Yesterday's death was 281, so I'm sure today's death is over 300. I hope not, but if history has any pattern on what today will be, everything will be up.
Right, wow, that's right. Nationwide, going on 66,000 deaths.
With over 1 million cases.
With over 1 million cases.
Sorry, brother Jamal Karriem, we didn't get to your question today. We're out of time, but hey, join us next week.
What did he say? Can you read it?
Is Mississippi taking action
With releasing nonviolent offenders due to COVID-19. Okay.
And that's really a good question.
Oh,
And I
man.
know-
Go ahead.
man.
It's really a
Go
good
ahead,
question because we haven't asked. And if I had known, but I have statistics that we have asked for the governor and corrections to release our senior members in prison, folks that are sick in prison, people that are over 65, and I have a breakdown of how many of those it will be. And we do have a plethora of nonviolent offenders that are doing astronomically too much time for minor charges in prison that need to be released. So thank you for the question.
Oh, yeah.
And we're working on that.
Okay.
Good enough?
All right. Thank y'all so much for joining us.
Always.
Here, Karriem and Company.
Imparting light, facilitating vision, fueling empowerment, and always inspiring action.
Brother Icon, do you know anything about that?